Hello, and welcome back to Organic Gardening for Beginners. My name is Jessica, and we have a ripping cold going through our house, and so my voice is extra deep today. Fortunately, I have missed out on the stuffy nose pain, but the voice is a little bit off, so bear with me today. Alrighty, we are diving in to episode 61, all about the gardener's year and what to expect as the year ebbs and flows through its seasons, especially if this is your first garden. But if you have a few seasons under your belt, I am going to bet my bottom dollar that you'll hear a few of these trends and think, oh yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds familiar. Now, this episode won't be so much of a do this in this month, do that in this month. I have whole episodes dedicated to those for every month of the year, what to do in your March garden, what to do in your September garden. They're all in there in past episodes, and they are some of my most popular episodes. So I know that people find them really valuable. So do check those out if you haven't listened to them yet. But if you want something printable, then I do have a garden planning toolkit. It is a printable resource. There are some seasonal to-do lists in there, links to those monthly episodes that I just mentioned. Monthly calendars where you can plan out your sowings, your transplanting, your garden chores, your purchases that you want to make. There's a companion planting cheat sheet in there. It's good year round. I put in a winter garden ideas and activities, little almost like a bingo card so that you're not feeling so winter garden deprived or bored as the season has slowed down. So I'll have that linked in the show notes if you want to check that out. It's very organized, very useful, and a great way to kick off your planning and your season. Alrighty, so let's kick off with the winter garden dreaming phase of the year, which in my area is roughly November through February-ish. And this is the time of year where you are not out in the garden so much. The year has wound down, the weather has turned. Chances are most of your garden is dead, either under mulch or just, leftover flower seed heads and whatnot, but there's not a whole lot of active gardening going on. The gardening that is going on is the dreaming phase. What do I want to grow this year? What pretty seed packets do I want to put in my cart? What do I want to look for at the nursery? Or, so-and-so grew this awesome thing last year and now I really want to try it. Or those dahlia tubers are beautiful. I'm finally going to buy some and plant them. Whatever the fantasy plant is, this is when that comes out. Or, I want to grow so many tomatoes that I never have to buy a tomato again. I have enough for fresh eating through the summer, canning them for the winter, and it's all coming out of my backyard. This is the dreaming phase where flipping through catalogs when it's pouring down rain outside and you imagine that you have 3 times as much space as you actually do. And so that seed shopping cart is overflowing as well as your budget. But this is the fun of the phase when it's dreary and cold outside. Maybe you're covered in snow and you just want to be in the garden anyway, and so you do it in your head with the seed catalogs and or the online seed catalogs. My voice is getting squeakier as I'm getting happy. Sorry about that. Not much I can do about it, unfortunately. But anyways, one thing you can do with this dreaming phase is make it productive. Think about what went well last year, what didn't go so well, what do you want to grow more of, what do you want to grow less of, all that good stuff to inform those fantasy seed cards and the nursery trips that are going to be coming up, or the planning for the garden space that you do have. I'm not saying don't dream. We all do it. I certainly do it. In my head, even being on 2 acres, granted we dedicate a lot to our pasture for our animals and, our garage and all those things. In my head, I have a 5-acre garden just for gardening space because that's how much I want to plant. Those are the flowers I want to grow, the new varieties I want to try out. Unfortunately, that is not the reality. So by the end of this winter garden dreaming phase, I have pared it all back down to something that my garden space and my budget can both sustain. But that doesn't make it any less fun while I'm going through it. And then we move from that dreaming phase into the action phase, what I call early spring fever. And that is where we currently are. If your area is anything like mine, your weather is going to provide you with some false springs where you have a week, a couple weeks, maybe even a couple days, depending on your area, that are gorgeous. The birds are chirping, the sun is out, you're in a t-shirt and you think, oh my gosh, here it is, it's spring. And then it rains, or it freezes, or it snows, or the temperatures just drop so much that you know you couldn't plant out a whole lot of stuff. And we are smack dab into that. And that is definitely March, a lot of April, and maybe even a little bit of May, depending on where in the country you are. I can remember one May in the past where it was snowing on May 1st, and it was 80 degrees by the end of the month. And so we got to see the whole range of weather in that month. This was a long time ago, but I always thought that juxtaposition of weather was crazy and it definitely made it tough to plan for the garden. And in this phase, this early spring fever phase, chances are you've ordered those seeds. You are starting seeds. And with this, I want to say, if it's your first time and you're loving it, awesome. I love seed starting. It's one of my favorite things to do with gardening. Or you're limping along trying to figure out what's going on. How come they're not sprouting? Why are they 2 inches tall but looking really weak? Why is there mold growing or algae growing on top of my soil? If that's you, don't worry. Those are all easy fixes. And I have several episodes about seed starting from last year. I'll link those in the show notes too. I think those were my March episodes. I can even look really quickly. Yes, those were my February and March episodes, all about seed starting, transplanting, all that good stuff. So there are a ton of resources out there for you. Alrighty, and then additionally, if you are buying seedlings, this is a great time to do it. You're never going to have better availability than you do now, not even in the late summer, early fall for those fall gardens. The spring fever phase is a great time to bring those two halves together. The seed starting half, the planting out half with your seedlings, and getting everything in the ground. Now, the name says early spring fever, which to me indicates that we are just chomping at the bit to get out there. And this, again, is where I'm going to remind you, don't push your luck, especially if you know you're in an area with wonky weather. It all comes back down to the weather. It's not about your schedule. It's not about, I don't even know what else. It's all about the weather and what it's going to tolerate. So if you're still having super cold nights, rein yourself in a little bit. Stick to those cold hardy plants. Don't even think about putting your tomatoes out this early, unless you live maybe in Southern California or the South. When I was in those two areas, I was always planting my tomatoes by the March timeframe in order to get some good growth before the heat and the humidity of the summertime. So I'm speaking to the rest of the country other than those two warmer areas. Hold on until most likely May, unless you're growing those tomatoes or peppers or squash. I keep saying tomatoes, but all these warm weather crops, beans, stuff like that, basil, tomatillos, melons, all those good things. They are so not ready to go in the ground yet. Those are most likely May, maybe in April, depending on your situation. I am trialing growing some tomatoes under cover in our hoop house in mid-April, which is anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks before our last frost, but I really want to push it this year and see what happens. So don't let that spring fever get the best of you. Stick to your cold weather stuff, your root crops, your lettuce, cilantro, fava beans. All those things are really good to get that itch scratched of I want to get out in the dirt without overly risking your warm weather stuff. Okay, so pretend it's May, it's June, you have everything planted out. This is the post-planting waiting game, and it is a doozy because you have your garden planted out, you've got all your seeds sown, but nothing's really going on. It's too early to harvest much. Some things have made it, some things haven't made it. You're not sure if it's too late to replant, which we're going to talk about that later on in spring. I'll answer that question for you. And it's just kind of a frustrating waiting game of looking at your garden and thinking, are you ever going to grow? I've been dreaming of you and tending to you and planting you for months, and you're just kind of sitting there not doing anything. Now, the things like chives or your snap peas or your lettuce might help ease this frustration just a little bit, but your beans, again, those tomatoes, your basil, your squash, corn is all just kind of hanging out and waiting for that warm weather, for the soil to get really nice and warm, the days to get as long as they're going to get. Man, these little squeaks are just driving me nuts. And this is where you got to practice your patience. Just let it do its thing. Busy yourself with other things like keeping on top of the weeds, figuring out what your irrigation system's going to be if you haven't already, figuring out your compost pile location, where you're going to put the trimmings or the veggies that the bugs got to, or the flowers that have wilted from your vase. All that good stuff. Do those little side tasks now while you have the chance, because it's going to get busy in the next few months and it'll be harder to stay on top of those tasks. If you have seed packets laying around from all your seed sowing, take a chance to get them organized, get them put away, make sure they're not sitting in the greenhouse or sitting outside getting rained on and then drying out and then rained on or sprinklered on for that matter and then drying out. That is a surefire way to kill your seeds. So organize that. You can pick up the nursery 6-packs that are laying around from where you planted them. Yes, I do this too. There are always 6-packs laying around, or the labels, like the little the plastic labels that come in, store-bought nursery packs. Pick them up, put them away. It's so easy to just leave that stuff laying around. It's going to bug you. It bugs me. This is a great time to kind of clean up after the chaos of the spring planting. And it will help with the waiting while you're looking at your tomatoes and wondering, are you ever going to put on flowers? Am I seeing that first sun gold yet? It's way too early for that. Be patient. Once this post-planting waiting game is over, though, come July through September, you're going to be in the summer garden overwhelm. Everything is growing. Your plants are growing. The weeds are growing. The bugs are coming. Everything wants to take advantage of the beautiful summer weather, whether you want it there or not. And so this time frame, these months, July, August, September, can seem really overwhelming if you are totally new to this, or if you just don't have systems in place to deal with some of these things, such as the irrigation that I mentioned before, or you didn't put down mulch, and so you're getting overrun with weeds to where you can't keep up with it. Bugs, bad bugs usually, are another really big deterrent to people for gardening. And bugs include, whether that's slugs or aphids or squirrels or your neighbor's cat. I'm going to include all kinds of pests in this category here because they are all a pain in the butt when it comes to the garden, especially some of the trickier ones like the neighbor's cat or the squirrels that you can't really get rid of. So don't get overwhelmed if you can help it. If you do get overwhelmed, that's totally fine. There's always a way to recoup this phase without getting too frustrated. The hot weather could be getting you down. Maybe you're having to water more than you anticipated or more than you can keep up with. Your spring crops are probably done. So this might be the time where you bring them out because they have kind of fizzled and you don't want to give up room to them anymore, and it'll free up a little bit of room for your summer crops. You might also be feeling the overwhelm of a busy schedule. It's summertime. You want to go do stuff. You want to go out of town. You don't have enough time in the garden. Your kids have things going on. And the last thing that can be overwhelming is the harvest. If you had a really strong start to the year, you might be bringing in more herbs, more veggies, maybe even more flowers than you know what to do with. And this is where we all joke about giving our neighbors bags of zucchini with ding dong ditch and, stuffing them in the mailman's car. And if that's the case, throw in the freezer because you can use it later for zucchini bread. But that, while an amazing problem to have, can still feel like a problem if you're new, where you have too much that you're harvesting and you don't know what to do with it. So it feels like you are wasting it, or you wasted the resources that went into growing it. If that's you, make it easy on yourself. Give it away. Don't even worry about preserving it, especially if this is your first year. Just give it to somebody else who is going to enjoy it, or dump it all in the freezer. If you don't want to can your tomatoes, toss them in a Ziploc, throw them in the freezer. They're good all winter. If you have too much basil, blend it up in the food processor, stick it in a Ziploc, throw it in the freezer. If you can make it all the way into pesto, that's even better. But at the very least, you can get it blended up with just some olive oil, and that will preserve it just fine. These are all things that we're going to talk about this year. In episode 59, I mentioned that I want to get a little bit more into actually using your garden produce. Growing your own food is one of my biggest passions, and I want to make sure that you guys are feeling super confident and super inspired to use what you actually get out of your garden. So I will have a ton more ideas for you in regards to this and your harvest. So my words of wisdom for the summer garden overwhelm: mulch, and then mulch some more, and mulch some more. That's going to save your butt when it comes to summertime overwhelm, because it's going to help with water retention, it's going to help with weed suppression, and it's going to make your life so much easier. Hopefully you can do it earlier in the season, but if you haven't yet, get some wood chips, get some grass clippings, mow enough of your lawn to give you enough to cover up your garden, and that is going to help a ton. After that, make sure everything has water, and that's going to reduce stress on your plants so that the bugs are less likely to go after them because they're all stressed out. It's a fun time of year because you have that amazing harvest. Like I've said, it can be a little bit overwhelming. This is a great time to write down notes of, holy moly, I don't need 10 zucchini plants, or I don't need 20 pumpkin plants because they are more than I want to maintain or that I can maintain throughout the summertime. So if you think of it, make those notes. If you can't, again, we all do it, and you'll be able to write it down later on in that winter dreaming phase when things are slow. The last phase of the year is, for me, solidly October. There's a little bit of shoulder weeks in there as well, but this is the fall wind down, where the chaos of summer, the overwhelm of summer is winding down, as the name would describe, and you are so looking forward to taking a break. You're ready to not have to work in the garden every weekend. If you are a weekend gardener, or every moment when you're home, you are ready to just kind of close up shop for a little bit. You might also be a little bit sad that it's the end of the season because your fresh tomato salads, or your fresh pesto, or your fresh salsa recipes are no longer going to be the same. But overall, there tends to be a feeling of, I am ready for a break. If this isn't you, if you're hearing me say this and thinking, no way, when fall comes around, I'm only sad, then I would highly encourage you to try a fall garden, because that is a great way to keep the garden going throughout the year, and it can kind of ease that feeling of, I am sad to not be outside doing stuff. I'm sad to not be producing my own food throughout these months. So fall gardens are a great way to combat that. And again, I have a bunch of episodes about them from last August that you can go back and reference to get some ideas for that. That is our flow through the year. We go from that winter dreaming to the spring planting, the summer overwhelm, and then we're winding it down again. It is a roller coaster through the year. It's so much fun. I have been gardening for, I don't even know now, 25 years, something like that. And the ups and downs remain consistent no matter how many years I have in the garden. It's almost kind of funny how it works out. Now that we've been on our property for over a year, I'm hoping to kind of smooth things out a little bit using some of those year-round growing systems, some permaculture systems, to make it a little bit more even-keeled, but I know how you're feeling. If this is you and you can relate or commiserate, depending on this ebb and flow in the year, let me know. Shoot me an email, homegrownfoodandflowers@gmail.com. Always love to hear your guys' stories. I've been getting some great emails since coming back last week. And it's awesome to hear where everybody's at in their gardening year, their experience, and just kind of see what everybody's looking forward to this year. That's it for this episode. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.